Hi everyone, good day. It is another day and another topic to be discussed in translation and editing text. By the way, my name is Shimboy Panan Fernandez and we are here in translation and editing text. We do have two topics to be discussed in this subject. The first topic to be discussed is translation is teachable and is translation of literary style. Uh, it is always been a controversy over the issue of teachability of translation. So, in relation, is really a translation is teachable? Let's find out. Is translation teachable? Um, if yes, to what extent? It is clear that no one could answer this question. Um, we just need to find out what the real nature of translation is. It is a science, a craft, or an art. In order for us to determine is really a translation teachable, so it is then that one can decide whether it is something to be taught in the classroom setting like the other field of study and with the same existing teaching method. So focusing on this one or on this issue, it is beneficial in that many problems regarding teaching translation arise from the fact that there are a great number of experience and skills in this field who has asked about educating beginner translators believe that translation is learned by experience and personal intuition and can by no means in taught in classroom settings. Many of us also believe that translations are theories and are all no use. In relation with this one, the state of translation as science. As we all know, translation uses scientific data, mainly taken from different branches of linguistics like neuro-linguistics, semantics, and sociologics, etc. Although translators uses scientific data and theories, they do it in a way that they gives free hand to individual tastes, bias, imagination, and temperaments. These are sometimes several solutions for dealing with a particular translation problems, and a creative translation may find a new solution on the spot. According to Newman 1988, what translation theories does is first is to identify and define translation problems. Second, to indicate all the factors that have been taken into account in solving that problem. Third is to list all the possible translation procedures. And finally, to recommend the most suitable translation procedure plus the appropriate translation. So let us put in our mind that if translation is in the state of science, it uses scientific data, it processes scientific steps to to come up with data translation. Um, Next is The state of translation is an art. So the major factor that prevents translation from being considered as an art is that unlike translator who have to solve a range of different problems, the defining factor of an artist's work is aesthetic. So still there are many others who believe that translation is an art. Translation has a lot in common with arts as well as in sciences. So it sometimes become highly dependent on the intuition of the translators, like composers and painters. Um, Translators often find their own moods and personalities reflecting in their work. So this can, in this way, we can say that if they will find their own mood and personalities reflected in their work, we can say that the state of translation is an art. That is the state of the translation is an art. The next, the state of translation is a craft. So, according to Newman, 1988, described translation as a craft consisting of attempt to replace a written message and or a statement in one language by the same message or and statement in another language. So, categorizing translation breeds some fuzziness since the field has traits in common with both science and art. So therefore, you must choose the category that is most congruent or at least most convenient and workable. That is the category in craft. So with this one, um, we can say that translation is a craft if we are attempting to replace a written message or statement in one language by the same message or statement in another language. So we are done finishing this to discuss about the nature of translation, whether translation is a science, as an art, and as a craft. Yes, as the name suggests, it is the core of the grammar translation method of teaching is grammar. So although this method of teaching is seldom used nowadays, some parts of it are still uh, popular with the teacher, especially for evaluating advanced student or specialized tests for translation um, or overseas final exam of courses where translation is still part of the curriculum. Whatever the role of translation in today's teaching and testing method, it is important to make distinction between teaching translation and teaching language. Teaching translation to students who are learning the target language at the same time necessitates taking into account two major issues. First of all, we should be aware of the fact that learning how to cope with translation-related problem is not exactly the same as learning the language itself. So, although they go hand in hand, there are difficulties such as translation of figurative language, culture-specific terms, translation of sacred texts, and other types of with regards to the function, which is falls under the translation-related issues. So second is it is vital to decide which language teaching method is better to be used along with the method adopted for teaching translation as a craft. According to Pinney-Mann's 1989 teachability hypothesis in applied linguistics. So, uh, uh, he pointed out that in his hypothesis that there are two sides in learning language. One refers to the developmental sequence, which is this one, the number one, for certain aspect of language that takes place regarding the regardless of the learner or the method of learning. And the second dimension is the variational sequence, which refers to variation in language acquisition based on the relationship between the learners and the situation. So, uh, in teaching translation, must want to take into the account that these two factors, because they are closely related to both translation and language. Actually, we can say that this language acquisition devices is important in translation, in that is effective in the process of learning the language itself. The second set of factors, those um, which constitute the basis of variational sequence, are important in translating due to the fact that they are all intertwined with the language and thus with translation. Being familiar with the target language culture is the best example of these factors. So, in order to be successful in teaching translation, instructors should be able to merge language teaching techniques they may deem best for the student with those of teaching translation. The techniques adapted for teaching translation should be chosen with attention to both sides of the nature of the translation. First, its objective and theoretical principle, and the second is the subjective part, which is mainly related to a student intuition and creativity. So, the first conclusion that we can draw from this topic is that translation is teachable. It's because, on the one hand, it is a craft, and consequently, um, teachable as the other craft, and on the other hand, it is closely related to teaching language itself, although it is vital to make distinction between the two. Another point is that those engaged in teaching translation to students who are learning the target language along with translation should be aware that they are teaching two different things at the same time, that they should use a congruent eclectic method applicable to both. So, believing that translation is teachable craft, they should help students to get any insight into the nature of translation and recognize that it is vital for them to pay attention to translation theories while honing their translation and language skills. They should also be aware that ignoring these points may also leads to student confusion, lack of motivation, and lost interest in the curriculum. And that is the worst scenario that um, we can expect if we are not if we don't follow um, teaching techniques in in teaching translation. So much for that one. We may now go to translation of literary text. Translation of literary text. The translation of literary style. First, in order for us to determine this, how we can translate literary style, define what is the definition of style. It is the essential characteristic of every piece of writing. It is also the outcome of the writer' personality and his emotion at the moment, and no single paragraph can be put together without revealing to some degree of personality of its author. So, in short, style is the man. So, it is universally acknowledged that in every writer um, has what we call literary style, and that his style is reflected in his writing. So there is no doubt that different literary works have discernibly different styles. So, however, regarding the question of translatability of the original style, opinions differ. Some would say that translation should reflect of the style of the original, and others um, should possess of the style of the translator. So let's find out if we fo- should we reflect or follow the style of the original, or should we possess the style of the translator? Intense stability of the style. Literary translation is to reproduce the original artistic image in another language so that the reader of the translation may be inspired, moved, and aesthetically entertained in the same way as the native reader is by the original. So, among translators, there are still many who consider the original literary style untranslatable, although um, many many think that it should reproduce that it is possible to reproduce it. It seems that the question of translatability is worth discussing. So, the reader must have a strong feeling towards the character, thought, and behavior through this artistic image portrayed in the literary work. So such translation is not purely a technical change in language, but it requires the translators duplicate the author's process of artistic creation, grasp the spirit of the original, find the most appropriate expression of his thought, feeling, and experience, and reproduce fully the corrective content and form of the original in a literary language comparable to the original style. So, such a creative artistic translation is necessary since the main task of literary translation lies in the faithful reproduction of the spirit and features of the original. So, theoretician holds that the reproduction of the style of the original work is necessary and possible, but um, I believe that it is really a hard task to accomplish. So, in spite of the difficulty in reproducing the original style, I believe that the effective interlingual communication is always possible. Despite differences in the structure and cultural features of the language involved, so similarities between language to the common core of the human experience and fundamental similarities in the aesthetic structure of language in the core form of the basis of literary, sustain, feasible, literary, or relatively feasibility of interlingual communication. So, the is the literary point of view and the linguistic point of view. First is the translator must have the macroscopic point of view, namely a view of a whole, macro as a whole. So, second is must have the micro point of view, namely the linguistic point of view. So, what are these point of view? If one to reproduce this original style satisfactorily, one must have to keep in mind before undertaking the translation these 2 points. The first one is the macroscopic point of view. Um, you should always remember that that he or the translator is looking at a literary work written by somebody else and try his utmost to turn his translation into a work of art which is a conformity to the thought, feeling, and the style of the original. So thus, the translation will be as moving, as vivid as the original work, and the reader may be aesthetically entertained as well. The second point of view is the microscopic point of view or the linguistic point of view. In this process of translating all the paragraphs, sentences, and the words should be attentively studied so that the best expression may be chosen to satisfy the needs of reproducing the thoughts, feeling, and style of the work. From this point of view, style is formed by the coordination of the paragraph, sentences, and words. Therefore, if some individual sentence or words are not satisfactorily rendered, they would affect the style of the work as a whole. Because I believe that a style can never go with the language, and paragraph and sentence and words are absolutely essential to um, style. The next is the conclusion part, in which the translation process consists of two things. The first is that translation should carefully appreciate the tone and the spirit of the whole original text through words, sentences, and paragraphs it is made up of, and determine what kind of style it reflects from both the literary and linguistic point of view. Then he start translating it by sentence and paragraph by paragraph from beginning to end with the reproduction of the original style kept in mind. So, the quality of translation has nothing to do with the original work or with the original, rather, um, it ref- it reflect on the knowledge and practical skills of the translator. It is because translation is not merely a science with its particular laws and method, but it is also an art of reproduction and recreation. So the thought, the feeling, and the style will be reproduced provided the paragraph, sentence, and words in the original or the SL are faithfully, flexibly, and satisfactorily transferred to the target or receptor language. Resemblance in spirit in the later is the crystallization of the former. So, uh, the translation process consists of two things. First, the translation should carefully appreciate the tone and spirit of the whole work to the words. Yes. And then the start should he translate it by sentence. So faced with the passage in the original language, the translator must ask himself, the first is what does the author say? The second is what does he mean? And the third is what does he say it? The translatability of the literary style of original works has been reaffirmed, and guiding principles and proper methods has been given. So literary translator must consider the reproduction of the original style as their common goal and strive for it in their work. So many translations should pay attention to the three aspects of the adherence. Um, Example, the verbal, the syntactic, and the semantic aspect. The verbal aspect is affected through the sentence in the work. The syntactic aspect involves the interrelation of the parts of the text, and the semantic aspect involves the global sense of the utterance, the theme it evokes. Yes, it is the tangibility of the literary style of the original has been reaffirmed and guiding principles method has been given. So with this one, these are our reference for your additional readings regarding the topic discussed about is teaching really teachable and translation of literary style. So have a good day and happy learning everyone. Goodbye.